Everybody, welcome back to Dad Space, the podcast for dads by dads. And today I have a gentleman on my screen with me, joining me from the amazing UK. And I'm excited about this because he's part of a movement in that country, in that part of the world, where parental leave is not what it needs to be. And instead of just talking about it, the dad shift, they're doing something towards making a difference and getting it out in front of the people who can make a decision that could help a lot of dads around paternal leave. So I'm really excited to have Alex here. Alex, welcome to Dad Space. I'm glad to have you on the podcast. Excellent. And not only are you the big part of the dad shift, you're also a dad and soon to be a new dad as well. Number 2 coming. Congratulations. Let's talk a little bit about your little family. I'd love to start there.
Yeah, sure. I'm a dad to a 3.5-year-old son. So he's in a phase where there's a lot of energy, very clear opinions of what he does and does not want to do. And my wife is currently pregnant. We've got another one coming in early August. So yeah, we've got our hands full. But it's
the first time somebody called you dad, Alex, a doctor, a family member, the first time you had that title given to you by someone else, how did that make you feel in the moment when somebody called you dad?
I think it felt good. It's something that I wanted for a long time. You know, we took a long time to get pregnant. We had problems with fertility in the end. Both our kids are IVF babies, and we're very grateful that that magical technology exists and that we were able to access it. So yeah, it took a long time to get there, and it's something that I had always wanted to be a dad and to be a really hands-on present dad. And so yeah, I mean, the first time you say it, it's usually someone kind of chuckling. You know, a doctor's like, "Hey, Dad," you know, it's kind of novelty of it. But yeah, if it's good and it's a kind of something I wear as a badge of pride.
It's a name that is in a title that's given to you simply by going through the process of having this new life in your house. It's amazing to know that we can go from a single man, no cares in the world. We care for ourselves. We take care of ourselves. Then we enter into a relationship with our partner. Now we have someone to care for and someone who cares for us. But the moment you have a child, it takes you to another whole different space. And I don't know, in that moment, it's weird because it's like you're given a title, but you have no experience. It's like on-the-job training. You get a new job. They walk you out onto the floor with all your coworkers and go, "Okay, Alex, there you go. Have a good day at work." And you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing in this new job, this new role. And everyone's patting me on the back saying congratulations, but I'm totally lost. So you have to kind of work your way into the title of a dad, I think, as a new dad. And I don't think we really prepare ourselves too much for that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And there's a lot of conversation here, and I'm sure in other places too, about how actually we need to be doing more to support dads, to prepare dads, to check up on dads after the birth and make sure that they're doing okay as well as the mums. Like, understandably, a lot of the focus goes on mothers, and that's right, because they are, you know, we're all aware, taking the brunt of the load when it comes to giving birth and you know, breastfeeding and everything. But yeah, I think that lack of support, it's not just a kind of practical thing within the system. You know, how do our health services support better? I think it's a cultural thing as well, that is part of what we are trying to change through campaigning for better paternity leave and trying to remove the other barriers to fathers being more active and present in their kids' lives. Because something I very much felt growing up, that I just developed an understanding that as a man, I was going to be just useless around babies, right? Like, I was convinced, you know, I was a teenager, convinced if I walked past a baby in the street, they would start crying, let alone held one. It's really tense and awkward around kids, didn't know what to do. And actually it was my wife who really helped me challenge that. You know, she's very smart on this stuff. She's read up a lot on how these dynamics are created. And she's like, no, that's a culturally created thing. Which really helped me work through that before my son was born. I was still really nervous. I was just going to be rubbish when he was born. I was like, you know, what if every dad, I think, has that anxiety about what if I don't bond, or like, am I going to know what I'm going to do? And for me, it all felt very natural, which I'm very like grateful for. But yeah, I think we're really taught that we're going to be useless. And people, that's how dads are often depicted in society, right? Like I've started calling it
Yeah.
the Homer Simpson fallacy, the idea of you see one useless dad, and every dad is portrayed as useless. And actually, it's like we can talk about this more if if it's of interest. But like there's a ton of evidence now, but it's literally hardwired into us to be
Yeah.
good
And then
dads.
do you feel more prepared for baby number 2 coming up than you were for your first child? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, more prepared in that I've done it all before, less prepared in that I have no time to, to like actually prepare. Because you've got a 3.5-year-old running around dominating your life. But yeah, definitely more like I feel like we'll know what we're doing.
Though I think
So yeah,
when
I'm
I
looking
was
forward to it.
looking back to when my kids were born too, it was the struggle for caring for my partner as she's going through this completely different life experience and the physical demands on her, right? As you mentioned, there's the change in our home. Our home is going to be different with a new life in there. And then I feel like the very end of the list of all the things that were changing was me, and realizing that I wasn't spending as much time thinking about how my life is going to change and what I need to do to grow, to not have the knowledge and the information to move forward. I had to go find it, right? And that's kind of the reason why I created this show, is just to help dads who are maybe they're going to have their firstborn in August, right? You have experience now that you are 3 years in, that you could really help a dad who's going to be walking into that environment, that hospital room coming up in August for the first time. If you could have a few moments with them in the waiting room at the hospital, there, any kind of words of wisdom that you would give them as they head down that hallway for the first time to become a dad?
I would say you're not an optional extra. You are essential to your partner and your baby, and like this is what you were. Your brain and your body is built for this moment, right? So like there's this researcher called Dr. Anna Machin who's actually just been on the Diary of a CEO podcast, which is quite a big podcast over here in particular. And she spent her career studying love, but also particularly the evolution of fatherhood. And what she's found is that active fatherhood evolved 500,000 years ago. And it's a very unusual thing in a species for dads to evolve to be involved, is the scientific term, to care, basically. Most societies, dads come along, impregnate the
Yeah.
female, and then jog on,
Yeah.
which is what happened to most monkeys. But we evolved to stick around. And the reason we evolved to stick around is because our babies, their brains were growing bigger and bigger and bigger, which meant they had to be born earlier. And they were so incapacitated that suddenly women, as a community of just mums, they couldn't look after the kids themselves. So our species only survived because dads suddenly became more hands-on with their babies. And that is how the babies could survive and thrive. And so when you look at what happens in your body when you reach that point, there are changes in your hormones, testosterone and other hormones, to prepare you for certain, parenting behaviors. You see exactly the same changes in men's brains as you do in the mother's brains in the run up to birth, and actually some more changes that prepare fathers to do a specific role around teaching the child how to behave in a social context. That's something that men are particularly evolved for, apparently. So like this idea that sort of men are not really needed, when we're not really, we don't have much of a role to play around the early weeks and months. That's actually a very new cultural idea. It's not the traditional idea. The old school idea is what happened 500,000 years ago, and it's just actually quite recently that we've changed that. That means I wouldn't say all that to someone waiting in a waiting room. Obviously, that would be quite a lot of science to put them. But I'd say, like, if you feel this isn't your space, this is your space, and you can do this. Your partner wants you there. Your baby needs you there, and like lean in and back yourself.
This kind of goes right along with the dad shift. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but the relevance of a father in the home when your child is young. It's not just like something that happens on the weekend and you go back to work on Monday and you were just back at your desk like nothing happened.
Yeah.
There's a piece of fatherhood that's really required in the early days of our children in the home. again, to support our partner, and but also to be there as a father. For you, how important is it for you to be around in August when this baby's born? Like, think about a little planning ahead here. What is your intent, and like what? How are you going to show up in August when this new life enters into your home?
Yeah, I'm going to live the authentic UK paternity leave experience, which is I'm self-employed, so I
There
get
you go.
absolutely no paternity leave. So we are fortunate. I've been able to save up to take a couple of months off work, so I'm going to be off for 2 months. Um, and I imagine we'll do what I did the first time around. You know, the way I showed up then was I gave practical and emotional support to my wife. That was step one. You know, I hear this phrase of like, men can't breastfeed. What's the point? It's like, well, I stayed up with her all night while she breastfed to stop her
Yeah.
falling asleep and to keep her like, sane, you know, through like cluster feeding marathons that lasted hours. And I took the baby out for drives so that she could get a bit of a sleep. And our son really struggled with feeding. So we were going to midwife every other day. And I went to those appointments. He had to sleep on one of us. He wouldn't go in his cot for a month. He had to sleep on one of us 24 hours a day. So I did the night shift and he slept on me when we watched telly. And the second phase is that I spend that time bonding with my son, you know, lots of physical contact, lots of changing nappies, like time with him. So that when I did have to go back to work, I felt like we'd got a head start on that kind of bonding, which mothers already get a head start on, right? Because they
Right.
carry the baby, they have all those kind of those hormones that get released through the process of birth, and fathers build that actively. And so I was able to do some of that during my paternity leave. So yeah, that's what I hope I'll be doing this time around with the added complication of a three
Okay,
and a
so
half year
for
old to look
people
after at the
outside
same
of the
time.
UK, can you kind of give us an overview of what parental leave looks like for dads, what it looks like for moms, kind of what are kind of the parameters for, say, a typical person who works, I don't know, 32, 40 hours a week currently? How much time do you get off when you have a new child? Can you kind of give us the kind of the understanding of what's happening right now before we jump into what the dad shift is all about?
Sure. So right now we have paternity, maternity, and what's called shared parental leave. So maternity leave you can take, it's quite long actually, our maternity leave. You can take up to 52 weeks, so a year off work. The flip side is it's very poorly paid compared to particularly other European countries. So you get 6 weeks at 90% of your salary. And then after that, it drops down to 40% of the minimum wage, effectively. So the minimum wage is the level your minimum amount you're able to live off in theory. Maternity pay is 40% of that. And then the last 12 weeks are unpaid entirely. So it's very long, it's very poorly paid. Paternity leave is somehow even worse. It is 2 weeks paid at that statutory rate of less than half the minimum wage, which makes it the worst paternity leave in the whole of Europe. It's worse than Canada as well, I believe. Across the OECD, the only countries that are worse than us are the US, New Zealand, Australia, and Israel, across the kind of 40, 45 countries in the OECD. So it's a system that is very out of whack with how the UK sees itself as quite a progressive country, as quite a forward-thinking country when it comes to gender and equality for women. And actually it entrenches a system that's very unequal, that pushes women out of the workforce and locks many fathers still out of being a big part of their kids' lives.
Well, okay, that's a really high financial strain on a home to go from a certain pay level, being able to pay your all your utilities and your mortgage and your home payments and your car, all those things. Those payments don't change because you have a baby. They go right, they go
They
up.
go up,
So
all of them.
what,
Yeah.
the imbalance here when you talk to dads that are part of the dad shift, what are some of the common struggles that you're hearing apart from the fact that I'm not making the money I was? What's the impact to the family because of these rules?
Yeah, huge. And I should mention the other problem with our system is self-employed people like me get absolutely nothing, which again, most European countries give self-employed people parental leave because they need it in the same way. So there are two big kind of short-term problems that get created by our bad paternity leave and or maternity pay as well. The first is the lack of time, which means that mothers end up with just no support very soon after they're born. particularly if they don't have other family around. And this is a particular problem for people who have C-sections, which are, there are about 40% of births are now cesarean sections in the UK. And you're told you may not be able to lift anything or drive a car for 6 weeks. You might not even be able to lift your baby if the healing doesn't go well. But then you're left alone after 2 weeks. And we have hundreds of stories from parents that are really heartbreaking, including one from a mum who was left after her C-section, wasn't healing properly, had to lift things she wasn't meant to lift, and her stitches ripped. That's the level to which she was left. So that's the problem on the mother side. It's also 2 weeks is the exact moment when you're most at risk of developing postnatal depression. So you're leaving mothers at that pinnacle risk point, and that there is clear evidence that mothers who are properly supported through better paternity leave have lower instances of depression. So on the father side, you're robbing fathers of that opportunity to bond with their child early on, and then pushing them back into this sort of pressure cooker very soon after their child's born. And the pressure cooker comes from, as you say, that financial pressure. So your family income is dropping off a cliff at exactly the moment that you are shelling out on prams, nappies or diapers, formula. This figure is something like £10,000 is the average cost of a baby in the first year in the UK, which is something like $16,000. I'm not sure it is Canadian dollars. And your income drops off a cliff. So fathers are the ones back at work somehow trying to make those ends meet. And at the same time, you've been gone 2 weeks and your boss probably doesn't really recognize how much your life has changed. So you're back straight away. And they're like, cool. Hi, nice to see you, Dave.
How was your holiday? How was your holiday?
Off you go.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, exactly. Hilarious stuff. And you're like, well, I'm not sleeping and my head is elsewhere. My life's just been completely turned upside down. And like, I'm not able to do this. I'm not able to be functioning at 100% right now, but you're expected to. So there's that pressure. And then you want to be there, be present, be a good dad. You want to support your partner. You're probably worried about what your partner's going through. And that's all heaped on you within days, sometimes after the birth. So, to give you an example from the stories we heard, there's a guy called Tom, who is he's self-employed, he's a landscaper, and both times his kids were born, his wife had emergency C-sections, so unplanned, and he did the right thing each time. He took 6 weeks off each time to step up, look after his family, look after his babies, take care of everyone. And of course it was unpaid because he's self-employed. And by the time I met him, it was 6 years later. He said he had still not recovered financially from the debt he fell into. And it was the start of essentially a kind of spiral of debt that led to him attempting to take his own life. Unfortunately, he's much better now, but it's damaged his mental health, his wife's mental health, and it all stemmed from not getting that support to do the thing he needed to do, which was to care for his new babies and his wife, who was completely out of action after an operation. So those are only the kind of short-term problems, and we can get into the longer-term problems about how it cements gender inequality and pushes so much of the parenting burden onto mothers, which is actually not something that most families want these days.
Like, talk about how fragile a new home and a new family is with a new baby coming into your life. Everything's fragile. Everyone's trying to figure out their roles. Everyone's trying to figure out how to navigate a new life. We don't want to mess it up. We want to do our things the right way. And just to add in that stress level, like you're at work as a dad, you're back to work after 2 weeks, your phone is going off like crazy. Your wife is asking for this and she's trying to reach out to you and you're just totally distracted. You can't focus on one specific thing because your heart's at home with your family and your body's at the desk trying to do work, right? I don't understand why it's such a big uphill battle to get in front of the right people, to have them acknowledge what we already know, that this is something that's really important and deserves to get some major attention so we can fix this. Because a lot of the societal things that are going to come in the future are based on those first few months of life in your home. So the better we can do that now, the better our society is going to be in the future if we would just invest in these homes and in these lives right from the beginning. And I think that's kind of the big part of the dad shift. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of where you're going with this movement? Because I'm really excited about this.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think everything you've said is spot on. And the dad shift, our goal is to basically remove the barriers to dads being more active dads, like being more present in their children's lives, taking on more of the childcare and the work of parenting, which is what most dads in the UK and I think in a lot of Western countries now is what we want to do more of. And it's important for all the reasons we've already talked about, but like what we haven't touched on so much, which you've mentioned just now, is how important this is for children. And there's just so much evidence, and it mounts by the day now, of how important a close bond with your father or a father figure, if you don't have a father in your life, is to children's development, happiness, and success in the world. So if you're close to your dad, the evidence is you'll grow up happier, you'll do better at school. And because of that role I mentioned that fathers play in teaching their kids how to kind of behave appropriately socially, particularly for boys, it plays a really big role in helping them understand how to grow up to be a good man. And there's been a lot of conversation in the UK, and I imagine maybe in Canada, the US, I know as well, about this crisis of masculinity is the phrase that gets used. But basically the idea that women's roles in society have changed a lot over the last few decades, and that's a really good thing. They've expanded from just being at home to being able to have careers and work. But what we've not done as a society is done the work of expanding the role of men back the other way, right? So women are now in traditionally the kind of male sphere, and we've not said, okay, great, that means you can now do more at home, which is actually where a lot of men want to do more. And so there's this gap that's being filled now by these pretty nasty ideas around how you can regain your sense of status and place as a man, and a lot of them are based around the idea of dominating women rather than working in coalition with them, rather than having a kind of happy equal partnership with women. It's about how do you reassert that traditional male dominance physically and sexually. And to give you one piece of evidence, there's a new study that's just come from Australia where 1 in 3 Australian men admitted to using sexual violence at some point in their lives, which is a pretty high number. But that is reduced by 50% for those who had a close relationship with their dad. And so that that it's such a clear example of, like, if your father's there, he's a good dad, he shows you the way. Like, it really makes a big difference to you growing up to be the kind of men that I think we want our kids to grow up to be. So there's so much benefit that comes to families and from society from men being there. And that's really recognized now, at least in our country. But at the same time, we make it very difficult practically for that to happen. And that's what
I can remember taking my kids out. I think I mentioned this to you, taking my kids out on a Saturday. I tried to take them out every weekend because I was working during the week. And then that would give my wife the Saturday to do whatever she wants, sleep in, just putt around the house, do whatever she wanted to do. But I would grab the kids and off we go. And that was kind of her time. And I remember sitting in a restaurant. They have like a little play area for the kids. And somebody we know, one of my wife's friends, walked over to me and said, is your wife at work today? And I thought that was an odd question. And I'm like, no, she's at home. Oh, are you watching the kids today? Like I'm a nanny or something. I'm like, wait a minute, these are my children. These are my kids. And I'm not watching them. I'm spending time with my kids. And the perception in that moment was that I was a replacement for my wife, and that I only was needed when she wasn't there. And I'm thinking, who would come up to my wife and say to her, without me in the room, are you watching your children while your husband's at work? No, they're not going to say that. They're right. Yeah. I'm not,
classic.
In that moment, Alex, I'm like, have we as men created this atmosphere where we don't show up consistently, and it's weird and different to see a father with their kids? Is that why? Like, maybe it's our error that we're not actively part of our kids' lives? Or do people just don't see men as a caring, nurturing parent who spends time with their children? What's kind of your perception? What do you kind of think of when you hear that?
Yeah, I mean that story is one that you hear from so many people. We've got a T-shirt, a campaign T-shirt you can buy that says "Not babysitting" for exactly that
Good.
reason. Because like, ask us, "How are you babysitting today?" It's like,
Yeah.
no, these are my kids. I'm looking after them. It's like you say, you'd never ask a mother that. Um, so yeah, I mean, where that sense of fathers as kind of secondary, not the native caregiver, where that comes from, it's very. I wouldn't phrase it as like it
Okay.
comes from us or it's our fault. It's a clear like structural cultural problem. And that's not to say that some of that hasn't been driven by men, of course, but it is to recognize that the roots of our behavior come from the systems that we all are born into and grow up into and the cultures in that. And for sure, there are some men who don't show up. They choose not to show up, they opt out, they're not present. Um, and that there's always going to be those men. But what we need to do is create the cultural change and then the like practical conditions through things like better paternity leave that both say to men, you are needed and you are good at this. This is natural. We have this idea that parenting is natural to mothers, but it's not natural to fathers, and it is natural. And then the cultural pressure that says like, yeah, this is you, like go for it. This is your domain. And that's something that change over time. And if we do that, we will support dads who right now think, oh, I'm not good at this, or like they don't get the space to learn how to be good at it or push through the obstacles they face and then fade out. They will you'll get more of those dads being like, yeah, okay, and they'll show
Okay,
up.
let's get into more about the dad shift. What I love about the dad shift is I'm seeing babies strapped to statues. I'm seeing some definitely raising the view of the need for dads to be more than just a father. Like we need to be active here, and I love how you're going about this, and you're raising awareness by putting this in front of people where you can't ignore this. Can you talk a little bit? Because like, on your website, I see a statue and there's a baby strapped to his chest. Can you explain a little bit kind of what is the thought process behind the visibility of what you're trying to do through the dash shift?
Yeah. Yeah, so the dad shift we're campaigning for better paternity leave, essentially. That's our first campaign. Um and we in the kind of visual piece of it, we very deliberately want to take this approach where we're trying to celebrate fatherhood through what we're doing. There's actually it's a surprising novelty and power to see a bunch of dads with their babies. Like you
Right.
don't actually see that image very much. And there's a warmth that comes from it, right? Like there's a history of male activism in the UK and maybe the case in other countries where it's a little bit of it's a space that's been tarnished historically. Like people have approached it in a very aggressive way. There's been a real like misogynistic edge to it. And so it's really important to us. We were like, actually, this is positive. This is pro women, but it's also like pro family. It's pro kids. And so we're deliberately trying to keep it warm, creative, accessible. And so that's where all the pictures we have of dads with their babies, but also those visual stunts, like where we went around London and put baby
Yeah.
slings on statues. I think you're mentioning of famous people. So there's one of Gene Kelly from Singing in the Rain, like holding onto his lamppost. There are football players like Thierry Henry, is a famous football player, sliding on his knees after scoring a goal with his baby strapped on. There's a statue of a guy hailing a taxi, and you like put a baby sling on him, and suddenly he's like desperately late for the
Yeah.
nursery, trying to get to work or something. And that just really caught people's imagination. And then we followed it up with other stunts. Like we got people to hang up 4 baby grows that spelled 2 weeks isn't enough around iconic locations around the UK. So like the Houses of the Parliament or the White Cliffs of Dover. And again, that kind of really blew up. And this is kind of a combination of warm, positive imagery with our campaign messaging and a celebration of fatherhood that we are trying to use to make this, like a visually interesting, shareable,
So
accessible
you're
campaign.
raising money for this. We can donate to the campaign from your website. When we donate to the Dad Shift, what are you guys using the money for? How does our money help the Dad Shift to move forward in your goal?
So we're a really tiny team at the moment. There's only one paid member of the team, and then some really awesome volunteers. And we are, as we're a small organization, we're still very kind of hand to mouth in terms of our funding. So the money goes towards our
Yeah.
pretty low core costs, that staff time. We make sure that if people are volunteering and they're having to arrange childcare to volunteer, we pay their childcare costs. And we've got like relatively low tech costs to maintain our website, email tools, and so on.
So if you had
So
the
yeah, it goes
opportunity
to
to
that.
stand before Parliament, before the people that actually could make a difference, like with a stroke of a pen, they could change something in the UK, and you were able to stand in front of them, what would be kind of your key asks, the key things that you'd be requesting of them in this moment that would have the biggest impact right away for dads and for families? What would your ask be?
So we think where we want to get to long term is paternity leave that is substantial, affordable, and equal. That's what we're saying. Substantial is a good amount of time, so you get that time you need to bond with your kid, and to support your partner properly. Affordable, it's paid so that everyone can afford to take it. You don't end up with people in the kind of hardship that Tom faced. And equal is the where we'd love to be longer term, so that families can choose to use it how it works best for them, not have it dictated to them by their gender. And so the best designed systems you see have those. Sweden's a really good example where each parent gets 90 days of leave just reserved for them, and then they have 300 days on top that they can choose
Wow.
to share however they want to do it. Almost all of it is paid at a really good rate. The last like few days are not. So substantial amount of time, well paid, affordable, and it's equal and it's flexible for that family. We recognize that Sweden's been doing this for like 50 years. We're quite behind them, and we're probably not going to jump to something as generous as that in one step. So as an absolute bare minimum, we're calling for 6 weeks paternity pay at 90% pay, 6 weeks paternity leave at 90% pay, including self-employed people. That would still be below the European average. I think is a very reasonable minimum next step. And we would want provision to then increase that further over the next few years. But that would make a transformative difference from what we have.
Are you getting
now
interest
already.
from government leadership around what you're doing with the stunts and with the website and with the movement? Are you getting feedback? Are people curious to have your input on how to make things better?
Yeah, so the campaign's made a real impact both in the public. There's just a huge kind of swell of support from parents of this generation in particular, my generation of coming through of young kids now who recognize how much the system is not supporting us to parent how we want to. And in Parliament as well, like a lot of new MPs have just been elected who are of that generation and they get it, they're living it, and they're like, yeah, we're behind this. So the combination of that supporter action, the stunts, the parliamentary support has definitely push the issue up the agenda. We've had now several meetings with senior government figures who are looking at this. And the thing that gives us real excitement is the government has just relaunched a review of the whole parental leave system. So this is something that's not been done for, well, years, really. Paternity leave has never been improved in the 22 years since it was introduced. And the government was elected in their manifesto, said we're going to review parental leave, and they've just launched that review. So that gives us a 18-month window. That's how long it's going to last. That is our opportunity that we haven't had for a generation to get better paternity leave. And so our entire campaign is going to be focused on feeding into that review, making our arguments, keeping the issue high in the agenda, and hopefully getting the
How
outcomes
does
that we
the
want.
dad shift directly support fathers in the UK beyond speaking to government figures and getting things moved along in Parliament? How does the dad shift actually work alongside of fathers in your country?
So we're focused. We're a sort of campaigning first organization, as I say, like pretty small. What we are doing as part of that is building a community of dads and mums, to just like make connections and meet and work with each other. And I think that's something for fathers in particular that is pretty patchy in this country. There are some amazing dads groups that we're tying in with as well, like Leeds Dads up in Leeds in Yorkshire, who've been amazing on the campaign. But yeah, we see a part of our role going forward is to put more into building those local communities of dads to support each other. And I think that's something really
So
valuable we
how
can
can
do
a
alongside the
listener,
campaign.
whether you live in the UK or elsewhere, how can we be a support to the dad shift beyond we can donate, which I'd encourage people to do. But on top of that, what else are you looking for? How can we help?
So the best thing to do if you're interested in getting involved is to go to our website, which is dadshift.org.uk. And there's a button at the top to add your name to sign our petition calling for better paternity leave. If you do that and sign up for emails or SMS, then we'll keep you in touch on whatever campaign actions we have coming up. And when there's there, we'd love you to get involved. That ranges from taking part in stunts to demonstrations. We did the world's first dad strike a month ago. We had about 1,000 people out on strike with placards and their babies calling for better paternity leave. And we're often like writing to decision makers. Like there's a ton of stuff to do. But the first step is go sign up. We'll let you know what
I want to know more about the dad strike. What happened? Tell me more.
Oh, yeah. So it was the week of Father's Day. We did that. And yeah, it was inspired by the Iceland's women's strikes. I don't know if you've heard of those. But so they, for anyone who's not come across them, they first did them in the 70s, where women in Iceland just went on strike from kind of the women's work of the day. So they wouldn't do domestic work. And I think there was a sex ban with their husbands. And it's credited with massively moving forward the cause of gender equality in Iceland. And they did another one a couple of years ago, this time striking from actual work as well, because they're now women are happily in the workplace as well in Iceland. And we thought it was interesting if we could adapt that idea to sort of make the opposite point, which is, women are striking because they have to do everything. And actually we're going on strike from work because we want more time to be dads, right? We're kind of locked out of that sphere. So we had people across the country taking part. If they couldn't come along to these pickets that we were doing in London, we did one in Edinburgh. They just went and did the school pickup all on the same day, which is something so many dads don't get the opportunity to do. They just took a couple hours off work, went and picked their kids up from school, went to the park, something like that. And at these pickets, we had hundreds of people come along, and that was mums, dads, kids, people who want to be parents who aren't yet. And they brought along placards, and we just had a demonstration, sung some nursery rhymes, and it was awesome. So yeah, as far as we're aware, the first
there you go.
Dad strike in the world.
That's a great idea. Talk about raising awareness too. If there's a news organization that would love to talk to you as well from the UK or around the world, we have listeners everywhere. So what would you love to come on and talk about that would help raise more awareness about the dad shift, but also serve maybe a news outlet or somebody that's interested in talking to you further?
Yeah. I'd be very happy to speak to anyone who's up for covering a campaign. And we have people at the dad strike from South Korea and Japan, so it really, really kind of traveled. So yeah, if you'd love to get in touch, we've got our press email address on the website.
Alex, any last thoughts for dads who are longing to be home with their kids and longing to be home with their family? Do the dad thing right from the beginning. Any kind of things we can wrap up with to encourage a dad who's listening?
Yeah, I would say if you're struggling, you're not alone. We've had thousands of people now fill in our survey and share their stories, and like lots of people struggle early. If you feel like it hasn't, you're in the really early days and you don't feel like it's quite right, you haven't formed the bond, that's very normal. And just like keep going as much as you can, just keep leaning in. It's hard. You've got a lot of pressure on you. Be kind to yourself. But if you lean in and don't let parenting being the thing that you drop to make everything else work, then my experience is you will bank yourself.
Well, Alex, congratulations in advance for baby number 2. Wishing you a safe and healthy delivery for you and your wife. And the new baby fitting into the home with a 3-year-old going, what is this human? You have another human now? We have 2 of us? So I'm excited for you guys and hoping that everything goes well. Wishing you well in August and continued success as you work towards a solution for dads in the UK. And as you listen to this around the world, you're probably going, I need to talk to Alex. I need to know more about the dad shift. Again, we'll have links for the dad shift in the show notes as always. And if you have the ability to do so, I'm really encouraging you to go in and support. No matter where you are in the world, I'm sure Alex and his team would love to hear from you. And financially, to get your support would allow them to do even more. So please consider doing that as a listener of the show. Alex, thank you so much for making time to do this. Excellent.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for sticking around here to the end of Dad Space. I appreciate you for pressing play and being a part of our community at dadspace.ca is the website, as always. And if you are interested and you'd like to fill up our cup, because dads, we drink coffee. So, hey, anytime you feel the need to say, I want to give David coffee, I would love it. I would appreciate it. I take 2 cream in my coffee, no sugar, because it's not a soda for our American friends. It's a coffee. Just cream. What do you take in your coffee? Let me know. Dadspace.ca. If you want to support the show, there's a buy me a coffee right there. Love to fill up my cup, and I thank you in advance. And thank you for being part of Dadspace. We'll talk soon.